The Vietnam War was not only a protracted military conflict between two countries in Southeast Asia, but it was also one of the most significant events that shook the world during the Cold War. This war did not begin from a single event, but from the accumulation of political tensions, diplomatic struggles, and ideological conflicts that gradually evolved into a violent and prolonged war. This war taught many lessons and led to unforgettable losses, starting from colonial rule in Vietnam, interventions by global powers, and the ideological power struggle between the free world and communism. This is the story of the Vietnam War that made the whole world realize the endless struggles of humanity. French colonial rule in Indochina. By the early 20th century, Vietnam was part of French colonial Indochina, where France controlled the region's economy and resources. French colonialism in Vietnam not only allowed France to benefit immensely from the natural resources in the region, but also created a sense of injustice among the Vietnamese people under this rule. Under French control, Vietnam was not governed in the same way other colonies were ruled. France implemented strict control over all aspects of life politics, education, and society, leading to increased resentment and discontent among the Vietnamese population. The nationalist movement led by those seeking independence began to grow, especially by the 1940s, leading to a growing demand for independence that gradually became more intense. The First Indochina War, 1946–1954. The First Indochina War began after World War II, when France tried to reassert its power over its colonies, including Vietnam. The Viet Minh, led by Ho Chi Minh, fought for independence from French rule. The Viet Minh was a communist group that received support from the Soviet Union and China in their struggle for independence. They used effective guerrilla tactics, making the fight not only protracted but also capable of challenging France's modern military forces. In 1954, the war ended with the Geneva Accords, forcing France to withdraw from Vietnam. As a result of this agreement, Vietnam was divided into two parts: North Vietnam, which was led by a communist government under Ho Chi Minh, and South Vietnam, which received support from the United States. The division of Vietnam. The beginning of the conflict. According to the 1954 Geneva Accords, Vietnam was divided along the 17th parallel into two regions, with North Vietnam under communist rule and South Vietnam under a pro-Western government supported by the United States. This division immediately created tension, as both sides sought to control and expand their influence in Vietnam and refused to accept the division of the country. After the division, the spread of communism in North Vietnam began to extend into South Vietnam. The expansion of communism in Southeast Asia made the United States and its allies fearful that if South Vietnam fell to communism, neighboring countries like Laos and Cambodia might follow suit. The United States, adhering to the domino theory, believed that if South Vietnam fell to communism, other countries in Southeast Asia would soon follow. As a result, the United States decided to intervene by providing financial support and sending troops to South Vietnam to prevent the spread of communism. The beginning of the Vietnam War, 1955–1975. The most significant event during this period was the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964, when North Vietnamese ships attacked U.S. naval vessels, leading the United States to fully engage in the war. This incident prompted the U.S. to send large numbers of troops to South Vietnam to assist the South Vietnamese government in fighting against the attacks from North Vietnam and the Viet Cong, which were supported by North Vietnam. The war between U.S. forces and the North Vietnamese army escalated. The United States used a military strategy that included bombing from the air, using helicopters, and sending troops into combat zones. The use of advanced weaponry by the United States resulted in a war marked by massive casualties, both military and civilian. U.S. troop withdrawal and domestic protests. The intervention in Vietnam began to be heavily criticized by the American public, especially during the late 1960s and early 1970s. The loss of many soldiers' lives and the lack of a clear end to the war led to growing protests across the United States. particularly from mothers who had lost their sons in the war, and from student groups in universities who called for the withdrawal of troops from Vietnam. This opposition caused President Lyndon B. Johnson and later Richard Nixon to face immense pressure in deciding to withdraw American troops from Vietnam. In 1973, the United States signed the Paris Peace Accords, leading to the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Vietnam. Although the U.S. withdrew its forces, the fighting between North and South Vietnam continued. In 1975, North Vietnam successfully captured Saigon, leading to the collapse of South Vietnam. The war ended, and Vietnam was reunified under communist rule, officially becoming the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The Vietnam War serves as a lesson about the risks of intervening in another country's conflict and the effects of an ideological struggle between the free world and communism. The loss of life in both Vietnam and the United States acts as a reminder of the importance of avoiding conflicts that can destroy entire nations and regions.
Want to hear historical stories in a fun and easy-to-understand comic style? Please hit the button like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's exchange thoughts together.